So welcome again, everybody. The workshop that I'm going to help you engage in this morning is a time where we're going to gather your ideas, your thoughts, your visions, the things that perhaps you haven't even thought about, but yet will be triggered as you're talking to other people, for where you hope NAUA will go. We're going to do that first I'm going to give a very brief review of the things that have been accomplished in the 2 years, basically since Todd gathered those first founding members and then organized the Provisional Policy Board. Because I think it's amazing how much has been accomplished in 2 years. But it's certainly not a place where we need to stop. It's a place where we need to continue to grow from, to achieve what we want to achieve, to do what we want to do, and, as Todd said, to continue to make liberal religions thrive. Excuse me. So I'm going to say a little bit about the structure of how we're going to do that this morning, and then I'm going to go through and do that review of all that's been accomplished so that you'll have more context related to coming up with your visions, etc. I'm only going to talk maybe 10 or 15 minutes at the most, and then we will go to breakout groups. So you will have a whole hour in these breakout groups to come up with your ideas. Each breakout group is going to have a moderator, which hopefully will help keep the conversation going, and also a recorder. In some groups, the person who's the moderator will take the minutes and record all the ideas, and other groups have chosen to do it differently so that somebody else can be taking the minutes or taking down the ideas. And the important thing is that all of these ideas that have been gathered in all of the groups, both here and online, that they will be sent to me, handed to me, given to me. I don't care if somebody in a group, just hands me their scribbled paper, as long as I can read it and it comes to me, I'm fine with that. But that I actually get those papers by the end of the week, so that an end of a week. So let's see, what's this?
Do you have instructions for the folks for Zooming, or will their host handle that?
Their host can handle that. All of the hosts had a meeting a few days ago where we discussed all this, so I think everybody's good. I hope they are. Let's see, so you'll have about an hour to do this, and then we will all come back. You'll come back here. The folks online who have been in their breakout groups will go back here as well. And the moderators of all the groups, both the groups from here and the online groups, will report back, and the moderators are going to choose not to read all of the lists, but to choose the things that are mentioned most often, the highlights, the general tenor of whatever the conversations are. And they will take no more than 3 minutes to do that, so that we don't spend, another whole hour. Hopefully we can do that in the last half hour that we have. And then I'll just kind of give a quick summary at the end and give out my email. I'll give it out now. I'll give it out in the group. The groups will give it out in the group. So my email to get these things back to me, these ideas back to me, which I forgot to mention, I'm going to collate, put in a package, and present to the board so that the board then can cull through them and figure out, oh, this is perfect, this makes perfect sense, or, we've thought about that, but anyway, so that they can ultimately take that forward. So my email address, I'm going to give it to you now. I'm going to give it to you at the end. I want to make sure that I get these things, unless I get the paper copy today. So it's Judi, Judi. Good, it's up there. It's judy.durham@gmail.com. Okay. So, Todd mentioned, gathering some of the founding members, and he had 2 meetings even before he announced to this congregation his intent to develop NAUA. That sermon, The End of an Era, which is kind of infamous and is floated around everywhere, I think it's, arrived to me maybe 5 or 6 times, which is great. I keep reading it, and it's wonderful. But the two meetings before that, with a group of the founding members, even they accomplished a lot. They worked on becoming the 501c3 nonprofit. They became a limited liability corporation, LLC. They went to the patent office to get the name trademarked. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. It involves a lot of work to get that done. Then on December 4th of 2022, Todd gave the sermon, The End of the Era. And I just learned that after that sermon, you gave a forum sponsored by the Fifth Principle Project, basically sharing again your ideas. The first Provisional Board of Trustees meeting was held January 18th, 2023, so just a short time after Todd's announcing. And again, that January board meeting accomplished a number of things. They established a ministerial committee, a bylaws committee, a newsletter advisory board, and they chose the name the Liberal Beacon. And Terry Anderson suggested a monthly seminar for members about liberalism, which ultimately became the Academy. The first NAUA website was online in March of that year, 2023, and was in great part developed by Reverend Monroe Sycophus. And I learned last night that somebody else had helped. Frank, was that you? Jay, that was you. You helped with that one as well, yeah. And then in July of 23, internet suppliers were changed, the site was redesigned, and they hired a special company that worked primarily with nonprofit organizations. And it's been up and running ever since, except for a short scheduled maintenance. And Terry Anderson has now assumed control over the group that oversees the technology. The first NAUA program that aired was an Academy session, and as I mentioned before, the Academy was a brainchild of Terry Anderson, and we've had 14 sessions to date, the first one happening in April of 23. And when Terry took over the website management, Steve Palmer became the chair of the Academy Committee. The first Liberal Beacon was published in July of 2023, and there have been 15 issues since, and it's now under the editorship of John Miller. There have been 17 third Saturday worship services, Todd preaching the first one in May of 2023. And the International Alliance held its first meeting in November 2023. and currently has relationships with individuals or organizations in France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Switzerland, the UK, Greece, Germany, Romania, the Philippines, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, Nigeria. It has a presence in the European Unitarian Universalist Association and the International Convocation of Unitarian Universalist Women. That's a lot of reach. Yeah. And the Circles group, I think, are the most recent of the activities developed. This was developed by Mike Long, who is online, and he developed the circle groups. How many of you have participated in a circle group? Some of you, good, okay. He developed these as a way to increase contact between members, and he sketched out the concept in December of 2023, and they held their first Get to Know You circle in February of 24, and they have continued on developing new circles since then. So that's the little that's been accomplished. And I mean, as I said before, I'm just in awe of how much has been done in 2 short years. You should all be very proud. Everyone who has worked on it should feel very proud. This is great. So, part of the reason that I shared so much of the specifics is it gives you an idea of where we are now, and it gives you a context from which your ideas will take us farther. The other contextual component is the ideology of who we are. And to say it briefly, foremost, NAUA is a member service organization dedicated to supporting and promoting the practice of all liberal religions. Our intention is to help Unitarianism, Universalism, and other liberal religions thrive by providing support and services to our members, and of course by embracing freedom, reason, and tolerance, rooted in our commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of all people. So most of you, I'm sure, recognize and understand that freedom, reason, and tolerance originated generations ago as part of the Enlightenment values. And I don't think I really need to explain them all, but I'm going to do that only briefly because I see that these values, just as much as the previous accomplishments rather, can further your thinking about where we should go from here. Freedom, the right of every person to think and speak for themselves and to choose their own purposes and meaning in life. Reason, every person has the capacity to reason and consider the empirical evidence before them in their pursuit of truth and understanding. Tolerance, every person, regardless of their specific ideologies or identities, should have an equal standing and equal access to the benefits and protections of society. These values, these Enlightenment values, might suggest or potentially could raise bigger questions like, how would we demonstrate, how would the NAUA demonstrate its commitment to freedom, reason, or tolerance? What kind of support services might NAUA provide to show our commitment to these values? Do you think that we should have a stated commitment to justice, inclusive of all of the various justice issues, environmental, human, criminal, racial, economic, etc.? Or does the practice of freedom, reason, and tolerance include a justice ideology? You know, these are some of the bigger questions that when you start grappling with, then you have to start thinking about, yeah, but how are we going to do that? So that's another contextual area for thinking about where NAUA goes from here. How would we operationalize some of these bigger value issues? Some of the more specific questions that you may talk about during your breakout groups are, what are your hopes and dreams for the future of NAUA? Are there programs or activities that you would like to see NAUA provide that are not currently being offered? What new communities or groups would you like to see developed or participate in? Would you like NAUA to develop ways to increase face-to-face or regional contact? What new committees might you like to participate in? What do you want NAUA to look like in 5 years, in 10 years, or even beyond that? What are your ideas for growing NAUA? And what are the kinds of things that you think your home congregation, if you're still part of it, could use? What would they need help with that potentially NAUA could help them? Okay, so what's going to happen now after everybody gets their seats? So if all the moderators can sit towards the front, then I will have you each come up here. I will start, but if all the moderators are coming up, it'll be easier. Okay, so our group spent a little bit of time at the beginning, maybe too much time at the beginning, talking about where their individual congregations were at with UUA, NAUA, and then we did shift into how to grow NAUA. And one of the strategies that was suggested was that we use a tier approach, looking at multiple media ways to gain new members. Everything from putting up a little 10-minute YouTube video of what NAUA is, to sending out the Liberal Beacon far and wide, to targeting individual age groups with different kinds of things, etc. We also talked about the ideal discernment process that the Jacksonville, Florida congregation is in the midst of, and how they are positioning themselves to do what they need to do to fully withdraw from UUA. Maybe. They're positioning yourselves so that you could do that if you chose to do that. was really what I was trying to say, yeah. And we also talked about all of the potential ways that NAUA could be of help to congregations or fellowships that are being developed or in the midst of developing, everything from providing canned sermons and, church in a box kinds of things to other assistance as needed, depending where they are in their process of development. And that's kind of the brief story of the things that were suggested in our group. Terry, I saw you a minute ago. Yeah. Okay, I was going to do everybody in this room first and then go there, but we can do that. They have more people too. Okay, let's see. I don't have their list of moderators. Somebody,
Kenning is one, I think.
Yep, Kenning. Can you hear me? Ken?
No, Ken has had a power outage, and he is unable to participate. So we only have 4 in our breakout: Stephen, Margaret, Mike, and Jean. Those are the 4 that will speak to you.
Okay. Gail, if I may start, Alan Lindrup will be giving the report from our group.
And Cheryl Pittenger will be giving the report from my group.
Okay. The first, Stephen's group, whoever is reporting for Stephen's group.
Okay, this is Alan Lindrup. I was part of Stephen's group and agreed to be the reporter out.
Okay.
The thing that probably had the greatest degree of support, if you want to call it almost unanimous consent to, was we'd like to see more programming that relates to spirituality, and this could be in the form of like adult religious education courses. There may be circles, but maybe not, don't necessarily have to be in that format, but various things that encourage considerations of spiritual issues. So that was the thing that had the greatest support. Second, we need to have a place, it might be on the NAU website or so forth, but where we have a lot of resources for worship. These could be, like was mentioned, canned sermons and things like that, but we also want to have a lot of all kind of readings from liberal religions around the world and so forth. And kind of related to this is the capacity for the NAUA to have a legal advisor who could advise NAUA fellowships and congregations and others on the issues about, is there some patent or copyright or something that limits the use of certain materials for worship and so forth. So that kind of relates to that. A third thing is, many of us had talked about the NAUA should encourage our congregations and individuals to work towards social justice or social action through liberal organizations that share our liberal values, but to limit any statements it may make on its own to something that is very broad, has is a very broad umbrella statement that could have a near unanimous support. Didn't want to go down the road of a lot of the conflicts that the UUA has had. So I think those were the 3 things that probably had the greatest degree of breadth of support.
Great, thanks, Alan. Should we move back to a person in here, Terry?
Well, not wanting to repeat things that have already been said, and the poor last group will have nothing to say maybe, but anyways, we thought we needed a way to shepherd or network new and emerging congregations. We thought that having a professional exchange, such as Jay has been developing, where people can find a minister without going through a lot of rigmarole as the UUA currently does. We needed a curriculum, mostly for children was talked about, but also for adult religious education. And again, the copyright issue, of course, came out. There was also interest in helping the NAU to develop ways that congregations can be members of both the CUC-UUA and the NAUA, and trying to facilitate that and make that common. We talked about whether we should have political stances and the justice kind of issues, and the consensus of our group anyways that should be left at the individual level, and it just leads to all kinds of strife within the congregation. We thought it was very important to increase face-to-face activities within regions as much as possible, and again to share resources from music to ministers to all sorts of different things to get some economy of scale going. Thanks.
Next on the screen, I can't see whose hand up, but
Yes, it's Margaret Stewart.
thank you. Go ahead, Margaret.
So we had 12 people in our group. It was a really great discussion. It was so interesting, the common experiences and common bonds. I would say there was generally good news from the small groups, and I think there are more small groups than we know. People, in my own case, the congregation in Chandler, Arizona, has a group of about 18 who are meeting separately and talking about what to do. And all of these groups obviously are going to need some support. Everybody is looking forward to development of curricula, especially for kids and youth, and maybe music resources. There's obviously still a lot of, the huge sadness at having to leave an institution that's been so central to so many of our lives and find a new path. But also, I think there's a sense of wanting to let go and look forward. And we mentioned hope for more support for dissident UU ministers who are in such at least awkward and really frightening position. Afraid to speak out, afraid to do what they might otherwise do. And huge gratitude for all NAUA has done so far. I have about 6 pages, but that's what I could pull out. So anyway.
Great, thank you. Good. Ron? Sure.
All right. We got through, you got about 6 or 8 questions that you told us to work from or encourage us, and we got through about 2 out of the 8, so that's about how far we got. And it was a hard time getting my group started. They just were pretty slow on the uptake. But, meaning they couldn't stop talking because there's a lot of energy out there, and it was wonderful. So the highlights, and this would go along with what we're hearing on Zoom and what everybody else is up here said. So how do we support Todd's vision? How do we keep that going? How do we spread that word? And at the same time, we want to avoid orthodoxy. Make sure the NAUA avoids any of those orthodoxy pitfalls that we've all experienced. How do we, a support center for those who've been damaged in their own fellowships. like a helpline? How can we call in? Can you send somebody out to speak? And maybe not Todd, because Todd's radioactive. I thought you'd like that, Todd. He's a lightning rod. So how can you slip somebody in there from the NAUA that helps support a town, a group that's trying to split off or having troubles and don't know how to negotiate? So that was good. How do we find like-minded people? Make sure it's a free thinker organization. Freedom of all religions, no dogma, anti-hypocrisy. Provide a place for those people who've lost their home. Support people in need of a community. Start some kind of practical psychological support call-in thing or a program. Give artists freedom to create. Give them a space to create and show their expression, in person preferably, but we know that we're virtually here a lot. How to get ministers? How do we find a minister that speaks to our needs? How do we get funds? Join the NAUA, find the NAUA. How can we help people find the NAUA? The NAUA needs to pay Todd. If anybody's going to get paid, Todd needs to get paid. I need help deprogramming people because we're dealing with a cult situation. And then on the other side, provide college-type programming through podcasts potentially. We need to get together in person. We need a call-in helpline. NAUA we got that. Let's see. Another one on analysis of issues called a dojo, I guess, that they do here locally, where you take looking at issues, how to find real truth and reason, and have a podcast outreach and analyze, make sure you're getting the truth. More people in person. We got to be in person. We need money for NAUA. Speakers Bureau. We need a virtual Speakers Bureau so that somebody who's got a small group that's just starting their church in a living room, that you can dial into a speakers type bureau, and somebody can give a talk. Start a business. I thought this was good. It goes back to funding the NAUA. Start a business. The NAUA needs to start selling things online, like mugs and T-shirts. Raise money. Start your business. How's that? Okay.
Ron, we want to put in Bibles, coins.
Okay, who's next online? I see Jean. I can't see who's in front.
I think Cheryl is next.
Okay, Cheryl.
Okay, all right. We got a lot of the same stuff, but one of the things that our group talked about a lot about was the circles and how they felt like there needed to be more communication on the circles and more information on the circles. And also they said that partly because we're so remote from each other, that the circles tend to lose membership in the first few weeks. So maybe some mechanism where after a few weeks you can open up those circles again so that you can get new membership, because there were people that were interested but unable to get into to the group. So a lot more information on circles, maybe even a separate newsletter or something, or email digest about the circles, so people can get involved with that. One person indicated that circles are for small groups. What about more? Someone said weekly, and others said monthly. An open Zoom where you have a small topic, you start out with a small topic, and then you go into it, and everybody's talking about various things that we need to be doing, kind of like we're doing here, where anybody can sign in. This is an open Zoom, please sign in if you have things you want to discuss with the rest of NAUA. So there was a kind of needing something bigger than the circles. Another idea was not to encourage people to leave the UUA, but if a congregation wants to leave the UUA, can a committee be formed that will produce the definitive document on how you safely leave the UUA, still protecting your assets, how to deal with issues you may have with the name of your congregation, which, so the UUA doesn't sue you for the name of your congregation. Also, we had several people that have that in their congregations that there's potential to do much more online and expand even those congregations that are kind of local, have local attendance, that there's the ability to expand to non-local, and that they needed that. And with that, in addition to having the NAUA as a service organization help with RE materials and administrative training and finding new ministers, also, as someone else mentioned, like a speakers bureau, some way to get in touch with ministers who can provide online services, online speaking to services of all these congregations that are trying to have more online activity. Also, several mentioned about not being definitive about this is our position on a social justice issue. It's fine to have social justice issues. In fact, many people want those, but don't limit what people can have in the social justice issues, including someone who indicated that they wanted to invite Republican friends, but if the atmosphere is too partisan, that it's off-putting to people, so that we need to be, make that openness liberal religion, not political, and a spirit of tolerance. Almost done here. Let's see. A big one. Okay, NAUA, you said we're going to be a service organization. Several people indicated we'd love it if you were a denomination, not just a service organization, but a denomination that congregations and groups could join. And someone suggested that if we wanted to have a conference on a social justice issue, that a good one might be climate change, that we have incredible assets through our people in the UN and other things, and that this might be a social justice issue that a lot of people could get on board with and avoid some.
Okay, Joyce, why don't you come on up next?
I wanted to note 5 things that I think came out of our group, but along with a lot more, but these are the 5. The group wanted us to plant the flag of liberalism, to create curriculum for lifelong learning.
Let's go, moderator, wake up.
Do you want to, are you back?
They're back, but go ahead.
Hi, Matthew.
Not yet.
Back, so go ahead.
Okay, so plant the flag for liberalism, creating curriculum for lifelong learning to explore and defend freedom, reason, and tolerance in our society as a whole, not just in a religious context. The group wanted us to help grow local and regional groups. I think that was to increase face-to-face community, and to do that, we need to let people know in a more thoroughly who we are, that we're here. Not a lot of, I meet too many people that don't know yet about the NAUA, and so we need to find ways to get the word out of who we are. The group also wanted us to focus a little more on feeding the need for spirituality. We can get too much in our heads and forget that there's a real spiritual component that many people are seeking, and that need not be from the pulpit, that can be in smaller groups. Also, an outreach in general. Both the list that we heard about the international groups was impressive, and keep doing that. But also within our own countries, that we should reach out and form coalitions with secular groups or other religious groups in our community. A Unity as a church is a good partner for many of the things that we want to do, and we can expand our reach by forming those coalitions